Aloha, everybody. I'm Eva Andrade, and on this episode of the Triple F podcast, Faith and Family First, we're going to talk about social emotional learning and all the wonderful ways the public school systems wants to get your child in the right place and in the right frame of mind. Is it a good thing or not? Let's chat about that. Welcome to the show today, everybody. And of course, as always, my brother in arms, Jim Hochberg.
Hey, Eva.
And to my left, and her opinions and policies is not on the left. Got to make that very clear.
She's my go-to on education.
It's a friend of mine and a colleague, Susan Duffy.
Thank you, Eva.
Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you.
So Susan wears two hats. So we have to kind of clear up some hats here because you know that we wear a lot of hats as well. So Susan actually is the director, or are you the president?
I'm the president of the board
Okay.
of the Pearson Foundation.
Of the Pearson Foundation. So Susan's heart and passion is to save babies and to walk with moms who are having a pregnancy that maybe they didn't plan. But the other hat she wears, which is why she's here today, is that she's a mom. She is concerned with what's happening in the public school system. She has done research far more, as Jim mentioned, than a lot of the people we work with. And Susan has been at the Capitol. She knows what it's like to testify. She knows what it's like to be looked at like you have a third eye, right?
Right.
So what she's going to help us kind of get through today is this social emotional learning, which a lot of schools are already using across the state. Hawaii is one of 27 states that are already incorporating this into the public school system. So we're going to talk about what is it, and is it a good thing? And if it's not, why not? So, Susan, let's start with you. What exactly is this social emotional learning, which sounds like a fabulous thing?
It sounds fabulous, and it is when it's organic. So social emotional learning has to do with a child's ability to control their emotions, manage their time, and make responsible decisions, right? And it follows that it goes along with character development. So kindness, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, these are the things that people think of when they're talking about social emotional learning. And if you're a teacher and you're in that field, you automatically care about children, right? Or you wouldn't be there. And so you're naturally observant. And so if you see a child that's being left out, you would say, hey, it's Johnny's turn to use the ball. Can you please pass it to him? Or say there's a child that has meltdowns in class, okay? And that inhibits that child's ability for learning, for academic learning. And it also is probably disruptive to the rest of the class. So what you'd want to do is you would probably take that child and you would refer them to the counselor. And then the counselor would deal with that child. Okay, so all of that kind of falls under social emotional learning. And originally it was based Judeo-Christian values, right? Love, basically love. And in fact,
Hard work.
And hard work. And there is a program called Choose Love, okay? That's 4 pillars. That's social emotional learning. And the 4 pillars were courage, forgiveness, gratitude, and compassion.
How long ago was that?
That was as of 2021.
Okay.
Now, this is the rub, okay? So the definition of social emotional learning by the go-to organization for social emotional learning, which is CASEL. So CASEL, C-A-S-E-L, stands for the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. Now, CASEL was originally the Collaborative for the Advancement of Social and Emotional Learning, and they changed it to academics because social emotional learning theoretically comes before academics, right? Because you want to make sure that that kid has whatever it needs so that he's able to learn the basics, math.
Can I put this in a context? Mm-hmm. From when I was a kid.
Okay.
So when I went to elementary school,
With Moses.
we had electricity. When I went to elementary school, you behaved in class and on the playground, or you got in trouble.
You got paddles. In those days, you got paddles.
And the learning process was always intimidation. Like spelling bees in front of everybody and go do your math on the chalkboard and that kind of a thing. So my guess is the proponents of social emotional learning would probably shriek at that kind of educational process.
Maybe.
Okay.
Because, whatever iteration they're on for this whole latest fad, I call it a fad, right? Because it's everywhere. You read it everywhere. Social emotional learning. This is the new go-to thing. So, but if you look at the definition, and I'm just going to read it because you have to look at SEL and then transformative SEL. Because prior to 2020, the SEL that we were just talking about, that's what everybody was thinking. So when you go on the website, you look at the DOE website or you look at the CASEL website, you see the pictures of the happy teachers, the wonderful, beautiful children and all this stuff, and you have this picture in your mind of this is what it's about. So,
well, but before you go to the transformational stuff, it's important to know that social emotional learning came out of the Aspen Institute.
Yes.
Which is a humanistic, God's not necessary philosophy.
Right.
So if that's the foundation, even when it wasn't transformational, that could give parents with my values a concern.
Well, we have to be honest because I know, Susan, you did a lot of work here in Hawaii when we were doing abstinence training
right.
in the classroom. And you can't take a curriculum into the public schools that have any reference to God and all this kind of stuff. So it's not that it has to have and be referencing God, but if you're talking about...
you're missing the point. You're missing the point because...
Wait, let me finish. You're arguing with me before I finish. The point I'm making, though, is, if you're going to have just a good quality curriculum that doesn't mention God is one thing, but you're talking about where it's basing from is something that's anti-God.
Correct.
It's foundation.
Okay,
the
foundation.
philosophy of humanism, which is the Aspen Institute, all the way back in the 1940s, okay? The philosophy is the denial of any power or moral value superior to that of humanity, the rejection of religion in favor of a belief that the advancement of humanity by its own efforts. That's the Aspen Institute. So I just wanted to make sure she knew that.
No, I knew that, but you interrupted me as you normally do. But for those people that like it, okay, there's our one fight for the show. Okay.
No, that's true. That's foundational.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're talking about is we don't have prayer in the schools anymore, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have because people are uncomfortable with morality, right? They don't want to, your truth is your truth and my truth is,
relative
it's all
now,
relative, right?
Yeah.
So they're uncomfortable with that. Okay. So instead of having these sort of values, these Judeo-Christian, and they don't have to necessarily be Christian, because if you look at the ancients, right, virtues, there were virtues that people followed, right? That's what we're talking about. But that's not what this is. This is psychological evaluation of children, right? So this is their definition. And then I'm talking about CASEL's definition. And remember, CASEL goes SEL, and then it takes a turn, and it goes transformative. And then you have to ask yourself, what do they want to transform? And why, right? Okay, so they say SEL is the process of developing the self-awareness, self-control, and interpersonal skills that are vital for success. So what they want
Sounds very good.
Sounds very good. But they want to measure and assess and monitor your child's values, beliefs, and mindset, right? Values, beliefs, attitudes, and mindsets.
And what they consider successful may not be what the parents consider successful.
Correct. Well, and then let's also address the fact that no matter what they claim they're doing, parents can't even get access to know what it is that they're teaching.
Right, because it's going to be on a Chromebook or it's going to be on a computer. So the children will be asked questions, right? So that will allow the teacher to be able to assess where they're at. So, and then that'll be on a dashboard.
And it's not questions like, what's 1 + 1?
Oh, no. I'll tell you what kind of the questions they ask, because now it may not bother everybody, right? It might not. Mm-hmm. But for me as a parent, I would be concerned, like, why would you want to know this? This seems weird to me. Like, how often were you polite to adults? This is 3rd to 5th grade. How carefully did you listen to other people's points of view? How much did you care about other people's feelings? How well do you get along with students who are different from you? Do you see where this is going? So you're assessing this.
And this is before learning English, math, social studies,
because SEL
history.
comes before academics. So what I think is that, what is the purpose of a public school? I think that's where the rub is, because is it academics or is it this? And I would say it's not an either or. I mean, you should do both. But again, I think the SEL from before this turn to transformative, it'd just be normal. And why do you need to have all kinds of federal money coming into the state to direct SEL to the teachers? And why are you collecting all this data on these children? And where is it going? And how long is it going to be kept? You know, that's pretty scary. And you think you're going to identify a loose cannon, say, a children with, and you're going to track how many interventions that child's had and who has access to that information, right? It's, to me, it's kind of dangerous.
Well, I know when we were preparing for this show, Susan, you sent Jim and I a lot of different links. And so we were, you know, Jim and I were trying to get a handle on this, because a regular parent sitting out there, probably don't have the time to do the kind of research. First of all, you're on a whole new level than
Well,
Jim
does
and I.
the school even tell the parents
No,
this
and-
is
and
their deal?
This is my point. So one of the links you sent me was a teacher at Draper Park Middle School who submitted a resignation.
That's
Right.
where I went to school with Noah.
Oh, did you? Oh, back
Draper
way back then?
Park.
Were you there when
No,
they
I've never
parted
been there.
the
I don't
sea?
even know
Yeah,
what state it's in.
It's in Utah.
Oh.
Okay. So anyway, so this teacher who was beloved, by the way, he's been there a while. He submitted his resignation letter, and in the resignation letter, he says this: because second step, and second step is one of the forms, right, of this, is a copyrighted program requiring a purchased license to access the content. Parents can only review the lessons being taught to their students by going into the district office and having district personnel show it to them. No opt-out option will be offered. So if we're going to look at the surface, this looks good, and parents don't have time to go look at it. This is happening right now here in the state of Hawaii, right under the parents' noses.
Right, right. They already had a survey, because they had to do surveys for kindergarten and grades 3 to 5 and then 6 to whatever. They asked questions. And so then you could go into the DOE website and you can look at the questions, and then you can go, I did it yesterday. So I go through and I go, well, Campbell-Kapolei complex, what does that look like? And then I see the bar chart. And then what if I wanted to fix one of those areas, right? What would I do? Like community building. So then I go and I went to second step. And then it's about activism. Okay, this is social justice activism. This is not academics.
Now we have some listeners that are probably going, but that's a good thing, right?
Well, is the role of a public school academics, or is it to create social activists?
Well, it's changed right under our noses, and that's why you're here. So we got to do something about this.
And for those of you that are watching on YouTube, the link that you want to check below is Nahopena A'o, which is the Hawaii version that you can find from the CASEL website. So
What does it mean in English?
Do I look like I can translate Hawaiian to you?
It sounds like Pono Choices to me.
Well,
that was
I
a
don't know,
real
but-
bad one.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that if you click on the link, it'll probably give you the translation. But the point is that if you go to the CASEL website that Susan is referring to, they have all the states listed, so you can click on the state of Hawaii. And this is where right here in the DOE, you can find more information about how this is being pulled into the schools. And parents that are listening, you do have a right to go down to the school and review any curriculum. It's not easy, and we will tell you that ahead of time, that
Right.
it's not like you're going to go down there and, it'll take
They
you
have a
few
happy
minutes.
worker that just loves to show you this
just
stuff.
no. But I think that if more and more parents start questioning and you find out more, but Susan, let's dig a little deeper into this, because this is bigger than just what you've mentioned so far.
Oh, right, yeah. And I'm not against it. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I'm just transformative SEL is a completely different thing. That's
Which came in 2021.
2020.
Which, very interesting, was in COVID days. Was it
Imagine
related
that.
at all? Did the
Oh.
money come out of the COVID money?
Funny you should ask that, Jim. Because, yes. Okay, so
What is the, wait, hold on. I want to hear the tea.
So I want to talk about money. And I'm going to tell you how I got into this, because it was you, actually. I was looking at, so parents were upset about masks in school, and I was on Telegram, and Telegram, somebody posted, hey, if you want to know why your kids are wearing masks, check out the amount of money that your state got under ESSER funds and see what they agreed to. So I start looking, and then all these acronyms and everything, and I'm like, what is all of this? What, I didn't get it, remember? So I discovered that $122 billion was given by the federal government to all the states. Right?
OMG.
COVID relief. And so they have this American Rescue Plan, ARP, and an ESSER, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. So ESSER, ARP money. Okay.
Mhm.
Hawaii received $412.5 million. Okay.
That's a bunch of money.
And part of that, that was supposed to be for lost learning because of what happened with the shutdown. Kids are academically behind, right? But of that money, 20% must go to SEL,
Interesting.
right? Because lost learning, when
So
they
that's
talk,
$80 million.
right? So you're talking a lot of money.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of money. And I'm thinking, but if you're behind academically, right? Why aren't we focusing on academics, and why are we focusing on transformative SEL?
So I can imagine their thinking. Their thinking is these kids are behind because they spent all this time with their parents, and
Well-
now they've retrograded.
Well, I think that,
We have to fix them.
Well, I think because there was a point in time, we can definitely see it. But Susan, part of the information you sent us when you're looking at the Hawaii assessments, though,
Right.
we've been dropping in
Right.
language arts and in math and in science since back in 2011.
Mm-hmm. But you can see the significant drop in 2014, 2015, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
So-
just in language arts alone, it was at the 71 percentile in 2011, 2012. You jump all the way to 2020 to 21, and we're at the 50 percentile. Some of them are serious. Like in mathematics, we went from a 60% in 2011 to a 32%. Now, my question is, shouldn't we be focusing on these very important subjects?
Can I ask you what the percentage means?
The percentage.
You mean a
is-
percentile? The
Percentage.
grades or the test scores
Yeah,
that
where
our
they-
kids
yeah,
get
they
are
were
at the
tested.
60 percentile.
Yes,
That's
and then,
failing.
now
Yeah.
we're down at the
Yeah.
32. So we've dropped in math
Right.
almost half.
Right. So if you look at the timeline, remember Common Core? When Common Core, the states accept, and again, this is a federal money coming in, and the state has to agree to do certain things. And then you look at when they accepted the standards, when they taught all the teachers, and then you look at the testing, and you can see, and then it just drops, right? So now you have the same people, generally, right? These think tanks, these eggheads that are telling you that Common Core is going to be the be-all, end-all. Now they're telling you, no, it's SEL.
Right.
That's really going to fix everything.
Common
right?
Core couldn't work academically because the kids had too many emotional problems. We
Well,
got to fix
we're
that
gonna-
first.
Wait, I have to see where the wind is blowing. I gotta change in a minute.
We gotta-
here.
yeah.
I mean, that seems to be what's happening, right? I mean,
Right.
it's, and I think that foundational value should never change.
No. Why would they? I mean,
Well, they shouldn't, but the problem is they have, because they've
Right.
shifted in definition.
now I saw a scary. So after I went to this, I went to Second Step because I have friends in North Carolina, and in one school district they went and they talked to the superintendent and the principals, and they got rid of Second Step. So I had to see what was wrong with it. So I went into the sex ed portion of it. Right. They refer kids to this particular link. So I go to the link, and immediately there's this big flashing thing that says you can exit here as quickly as you want, and your history will be erased and all this stuff. And I'm like, why would you
Wow.
refer an 8th grader to that sort of website? And it's because it's got material in there that's really kind of inappropriate for
Now,
No
teenagers.
kidding.
again, I want to be clear that Susan does a lot more research than most parents have the time to do. And like right here in Hawaii, sex ed is a big thing for Susan, a very big thing for Susan. And I think, what are there, 6 approved curriculums here in the state, or is it 7?
Right. I think it's 6.
Okay. Now, of those 6, we had a state legislator, Bob McDermott, who we've had on the show, who actually requested copies of the curriculum. Susan, please tell our listeners and viewers how easy it was for Bob to get the curriculum. And he's a legislator.
It was so easy they wouldn't give it to him. Right. They wouldn't give it to him. Oh, you can come and look at it, or we'll time you, or
So
you'll have to pay.
I throw that out because if there's a parent listening that's going, you know what, I'm going to call my school and ask about this. I just want to give them heads up that it may not be easy to get.
Well, they may tell you things that aren't true.
Or they
or they
they'll
don't
give
know. They do not know. Like, how many people know that the CEO of CASEL came out and said, hey, you know these 5 pillars that we use for SEL? We can take those and we can incorporate our social justice. So this is social
The
justice.
transformational part.
And if you think of it as, there's many metaphors, right? You like the guy that's the expert on CRT says it's like the syringe. Like, it would be the syringe to get in sex ed, critical race theory, and all this stuff. But I like the image of the umbrella. So if you think of the umbrella, and that's SEL, underneath you get sex ed, you get critical race theory, you get equity, you get inclusion, you get welcoming,
Gender stuff.
gender ideology and all of that. And then it's not in a particular curriculum. So as a parent, you can't say, well, I want to go see that sex ed curriculum and I'm going to opt my child out, because it won't matter. It'll be everywhere. It'll even be in math, right?
So can you tell us, Susan, some of the biggest concerns that you had looking into this?
My biggest concern was the fact that this is not transparent to parents. Okay, it's not. And I don't think the teachers know either. I really don't. I think that they think this is a good thing, right? So
Well, it sounds good if
it
you're
sounds
looking
good.
at just
And
the
then the other
surface.
thing is data collection. Like data collection's another one. And then why are we asking teachers to be therapists in the classroom, right? Because no matter how well intentioned you are, a child may be struggling, but maybe he has a tummy ache that day, or maybe something went wrong at home before he left for school. But it's just an isolated incident, right? You shouldn't be doing stuff like that. You shouldn't be bringing up sensitive items either in a group with
See, teachers,
of kids.
And I think we would all agree that teachers have to, when they're teaching a classroom, they have to be mindful
Right.
of what's happening in the classroom, right? If they notice a young girl sitting there with a black eye, for instance, right? The teacher should be prepared to address that.
Right.
But this is asking them to go deeper.
Right.
Actually, I don't think the teacher addresses the girl with the black eye. I think the teacher passes the girl with the black eye to the school counselor, who is actually a social
No,
worker
the teachers
trained
are
person.
actually trained now to ask the right questions, because the girl could have tripped and fell down the stairs on her way in there. So the teacher has to be that first line of defense before the counselor, because the teacher isn't going to go see the counselor.
They told me that all the time.
Well, that's Jim. That's a whole nother show.
But when you're talking about evaluating, monitoring, and assessing a child's values, attitudes, beliefs, and mindset, and we're not talking about the same thing. I mean, whose attitude, whose values,
Well, and that's exactly, and I want to save the last 5 minutes for you to tell our viewers and me and Eva, what do we do? But before we get to that, that's the great question, because whose values are so the American Library Association and others are attacking parents for protecting kids from books in the library about transgender stuff. $200,000 is spent by the New York City schools for drag queen shows. Okay, those values through SEL are not necessarily the values that parents want the teachers and the school system to be pushing, but they might be.
Well, because a teacher could come into these situations with their own bias,
right?
as well,
And they're an authority figure,
right.
And what child is going to go against like groupthink, right?
Correct.
All by himself. And so there's a disconnect, right? I'm being told this thing at home, but I'm in school and I'm being told this thing. And
It's the old peer pressure thing,
yeah,
right?
and adults have trouble with peer pressure. I mean, that's just normal. But a child, I mean, the only person that's going to take care of your child is you, the parent. The bureaucracy's not going to do it. Teachers can't do it. It's you. You're the parent. You have a responsibility to go and see what's happening in the school. So what I would say is that you need to get to know the teacher. Parents should have a very good relationship with the teacher and the superintendent and find out what's going on, find out what programs are being used. I would go and look and see what the questions that were asked of my child, see what the answers were. I would just see, what are you monitoring? How many times are you giving surveys to kids? What kind of questions are you being asked? Maybe opt out of the surveys. I would opt out. I wouldn't do it, because that data will follow your child for the rest of their life.
Well, and I think because it goes to Jim's question of, okay, what do we do, right? It was interesting. One of the things you and I had talked about was you got to listen to your child and even their friends sometimes on what they're hearing in the classroom. So share your story of, hearing about a kid who talked about his classmate.
Right. So there's an anecdote, right, of a friend of mine who had a child that had a sleepover, and the friend tells him, this is what happened in school. They're in middle school, and they saw this sex ed video, and it was way too much. And the three of them walked out, right? Now, that's just an anecdote. I don't know if there's that true or not. That happened here, but I believe it because I've seen some of those videos. I know what those Amaze videos look like, right? So this stuff happens, right? So you have to keep the lines of communication open with your child, and you have to be able to go look at the curriculum or look at the program. Like what specific program is that classroom using to address community building or something? Because it looks to me like everything is action oriented at the end, right? It's not learning for learning's sake. And I don't understand why not pay teachers more money, reduce the class size, and then hire tutors for the kids that are having trouble instead of putting $400 and some million into this, right?
Well, that pot of money in COVID was so huge, trillions of dollars, 1.9 trillion for this, 3 trillion for that. I can't even imagine how much money that is. But it is so much money that you can give big chunks, hundred billions of dollars to schools across the country if you're Congress. And then it filters down and people like you have to go and figure out what the heck's going on. But you know, the other really interesting thing is in the Hawaii Department of Education, the department was not training the teachers to do this SEL. It was the union that was training the teachers to do the SEL. The union is a completely private organization. Parents have no right to find out from the union what the union's teaching the teachers. If it's in the DOE and you're tenacious enough to push through, you do have the right as a parent to find out what kind of training the teachers are getting, but not when it's the union.
Right.
Well, yeah, and you want to make sure that you visit, for those of you listening and watching, you got to go check out the hsta.org website, because they put up the resources and virtual classroom discussions that some of your kids may be participating in. And in fact, just on June 5th, they updated their LGBTQ plus pride resources so that you would see what's being taught in the classroom. This is just one aspect. So in this last minute, Susan, recap for parents what they can do.
All right, you need to get involved, first of all.
Amen.
You got it. You can't, no one's going to come in and save you. You got to get to know your child's teacher, probably know the principal, and you need to get informed on this issue. And there's a lot of YouTube videos out there. A lot of people are talking about SEL. A lot of parents in uproar over it on the mainland. And then I would opt out of the surveys, the SELs, because you don't know that data, where that's going to go, how long that's going to
And it's tied to your kid's identity, right? It's not
Correct.
an anonymous thing.
Correct.
Because they're evaluating
and, you know,
the kid.
kids change over time, right? Your child might be a whiny kindergartner, but he may be the, you know, the quarterback for the football team when he's in high school. So this stuff is, you know, really dangerous to me. Probably check the child's Chromebook, you know, because everything's on a computer. I would check what was done that day, every day. And then I would opt out of any controversial lesson. So, and we do have that policy, 101.13. We talked about that. Like, you have the right as a parent to opt out.
If the teacher thinks it's a controversial issue, so they tell you about
Which
it.
goes back to why you need to.
And let me also leave with this. If you choose to opt your child out, you've got to be able to work with your child to fill in those gaps, because if they're not going to get it at school, they need to get it somewhere. And so
Right.
you be that parent. You talk to them.
Well,
about
and
these
hopefully
things.
if you're opting them out, you're not teaching the same information that you opted them out from.
Well,
Maybe you're using a biblical foundation.
Well, you know, I think parents need to take back their role. And all Christians know that the first and foremost responsibility of the parent is to educate your child.
Yep.
So that's what you got to do. Take that back, people.
You're my hero, Susan.
Yes.
You're
as
absolutely my hero.
As we end our discussion, and I enjoy this tea, that was wonderful tea we had. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment. If you're a parent in school and you're seeing some problems with your kid, send an email to Jim Hochberg at Jim at jameshochberglaw.com and let him know. And maybe there's something that can be done. And if not, stay tuned, because next week we're going to be talking to an ADF attorney about a great court case. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha.